Howdy gang, welcome back to Pool School. In today's episode, I'm going to be somewhat specific on this subject. It is how to deal with your pool in the aftermath of a monsoon or dust storm. So, what do you say we dive right in? Alrighty, before we get started, a couple quick things. First of all, thank you for watching, and please remember to like this video if you do, subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, and please share my channel with everyone you know who owns a pool. Also, I want to give a shout out to the good people at Sunday Afternoons. They are the people that make this hat. This hat is called the Adventurer hat, and their website address is sundayafternoons.com. It's my favorite hat. You've seen it in a lot of videos. This is a new one. They actually were kind enough to send me one, and they sent me a couple that I had a contest to give a couple away. So congratulations again to the winners of that. But if you're interested in getting a hat like this, I've put a link to their website below, sundayafternoons.com. It'll probably come across the screen too. And if you want to order a hat from them, you can. If you do, please tell them that you heard about them through Pool School. Okay? Perfect. Alrighty, now on to business. So I've had several people reach out to me. Some live in Arizona, some live in Las Vegas or in desert areas like such. And they have asked me specifically, how do you deal with your pool after a monsoon or a dust storm? Now in Arizona, we kind of consider those two things to go hand in hand. And if we have a massive dust storm, which we've had on occasion, we call those haboobs, okay? So I'm gonna tell you how to deal with a pool after a situation like that occurs. It's really not that difficult, but there are a couple things you need to have in place so that you can be able to deal with it. Because even though your pool might be clear after a monsoon or haboob, there's some stuff you need to take care of so it doesn't all of a sudden go green out of nowhere on you. So first thing, I'm going to talk about some of the chemicals that you're going to want to have on hand in order to care for your pool after a monsoon or dust storm. Alrighty, so there's a couple things that you're going to want to have on hand in order to deal with the aftermath of a monsoon or dust storm. And if you haven't watched my video on the 7 chemicals, the only 7 chemicals you really need to have for to take care of your pool, please watch that video. I'm going to put a link to that video in the description of this video below. Okay, so 2 items you're going to have. All right, the first one is some trichlor granules. Okay, now you can get these in 1 pound pre-packaged pouches, but the 2 that I've used before, obviously I use Easy Chlor's granular algae out. Okay, and again, I've got like what is this? This is a 10-pound bucket. You really don't need quite that much, but it's nice to have it on hand. And this is the kind of shock I prefer to use. I don't want you using dichlor shock or cal hypo shock. Specifically, have on hand some trichlor shock or trichlor granules. If you've not seen my video on shock and why I don't use it very much, please watch that video. I'll put a link to that below as well. Okay, the second thing you're going to want to have, absolutely, is a good phosphate remover. This one is made by Orenda Technologies. It's the one, you've probably seen it before. I've talked about it a lot. It's my go-to PR10000. Okay, absolutely my favorite. I use a lot of different ones, and that one by far is my favorite. Okay, so those are 2 things you're going to want to have on hand when dealing with the aftermath of a dust storm or monsoon. But if you have that video on the 7 chemicals you need, you should have those on hand already. Now, if you don't want to use the trichlor granules, although I recommend them, you can instead use liquid chlorine. All right, so now let's talk about the special things you need to do. There's not a lot to deal with your pool after a monsoon or dust storm. Okay, I'm going to apologize right now. We got a little bit of breeze going here, so if you get any wind buffeting in my mic, I apologize. I hope it will be okay. A couple things. Number one, I've held off on doing this video because we just haven't had any major monsoon storms lately. So we've had 3 now in the last 4 days. And so I thought that would be a good time to do a video on it. The only thing is, all my pools are set up so well that I've had no issues with them. They're fine. So the only big thing is they had a lot of excess vegetation. Not all of them, just a couple that maybe have a ton of vegetation around them. So that was the only big issue. But there are some things, like I said, that you may have to deal with when it comes to cleaning up or dealing with your pool in the aftermath of a monsoon or a haboob, and that's what we want to try to deal with today. Okay, I want to caveat it with this. If your pool is set up right, that means your pool chemistry is all in the ideal range. Chlorine, pH, alkalinity, cyanuric acid, your phosphates are kept low. You have clean filter medium, sand filter, DE, or cartridge are clean, and your pump runs well and runs long enough, and you have an adequate cleaning system, either a stay in the pool vacuum or and I'm talking about a suction side vacuum, or maybe a pop-up cleaning system that works well, you should have no issues really with a storm leaving a ton of dust in the bottom of your pool. Maybe some, but a little, okay? To go back, in the last 20 years since I've been doing pools, man, this wind's starting to kick up. I hope it's not making a bunch of noise. I'm trying to shield it. But in the last 20 years of doing pools, I have literally only run into a situation twice, okay? And it was all in the same season. We had a swim season where we literally had 4 massive dust storms in a row. That means 4 days in a row we had a massive dust storm, to where some of those videos went viral on YouTube, and you could see the wall of dust coming into the valley. It was brutal. So in that particular case, there were 2 pools, neither one of which had any type of cleaning system in them, that ended up with about a layer of mud on the bottom of them, about 1 inch thick in the deeper portion of the pool, okay? In which case I ended up having to vacuum them the old-fashioned way until I got them cleaned out, and we'll go into that a little bit later, all right? So I'm saying that because, like I said, it's really not that big a deal. There's just a couple things you need to deal with. So now we're gonna go over the steps that you're gonna wanna take after a monsoon or dust storm. So here we go. Alrighty. Number 1, the first thing you want to do before you ever turn your pump or filter system on at all, okay? That's going to be one of the later things that you do. First and foremost, empty the skimmer basket, the pump basket, and if you have like an inline leaf canister for your vacuum or your pop-up system, empty all of those baskets, all right? You want to make sure that you have unhindered flow when you do, but not yet, fire up your filter pump, and if you have an additional booster motor for your pop-up system. Don't do that yet, okay? Just empty the baskets, pump, skimmer, and any additional baskets, okay? Number 2, get a leaf catcher and net out the vast majority of the debris from your pool bottom and surface. Now, if you've not seen my video on leaf rakes or leaf catchers, this is what I'm talking about. This is a leaf rake, all right? Don't get those cheap, shallow leaf skimmers because they're surface and they don't work very well. Get a good leaf rake. And if you haven't seen my video on those, this one is actually called the Gator. It's Tough Duty Gator, all right? I don't know if you can see that, but it's absolutely my favorite, all right? And use that or something similar to net out the vast majority of the debris / vegetation, both in the bottom and the surface of your pool, okay? Again, you're doing this before you turn any systems on, all right? Because if you turn your systems on and it starts moving those around, you're gonna be chasing those leaves. It's better, a lot of times it clumps up. It's better to just get them all, the majority of them, right away. Okay, so that's number 1. That's number 2, right? So the first one, empty all baskets, skimmer, pump, and everything else. Number 2, net out the majority of the vegetation on the bottom and the surface of your pool, okay? Number 3, now we get to do this. Number 3, I want you to turn on your pool filter pump, okay? And if you have a pop-up system that has a dedicated or a secondary booster pump, turn that on too, okay? Get those going at this point, all right? Now, this is where it gets a little specific. If you have a sand filter, backwash it immediately. If you have a DE filter, all right, and the PSI on the pressure gauge on top of the filter is reading 18 or more PSI, it might be a good idea to backwash and recharge that DE filter at that time as well. If you have a cartridge filter and it's been less than, let's say, 7 or 8 months since you've cleaned the cartridges, you probably should be okay. If it's longer than that, maybe 8 to 10 months, you might want to clean your cartridge filter. Now, I've put links to how to do all those things in the description below this video, so check that out, and you can look specifically if you have a cartridge filter. I did one for Hayward, Pentair, and Stay Right, so you can pick the one that works best for you, or that is your brand and model, and hopefully that'll help you, okay? So you want to clean that medium if you need to, that filter medium, okay? So that's the next step, okay? After that, and this one is probably the most critical, you want to test your pool's chemistry specifically to look for the free chlorine level. Okay, pH and alkalinity, don't worry too much about those right now. There are some people who might disagree with that. Don't worry about those too much right now. Get your chlorine levels up, okay? And this is where the trichlor shock or the liquid chlorine come in. If you notice that your chlorine levels, especially your free chlorine levels, are low, then if you have a standard play pool, which is anything from 10 to 15,000 gallons, you're going to want to add a pound of the trichlor granules. Now, mind you, remember, you're adding all this now with the filter system running, so it helps mix the chemicals in the pool quickly and distribute them, okay? So add a pound of the trichlor granules around your pool. If you don't want to do the trichlor granules, although I recommend it because it does have an effect on killing algae spores, okay, you're going to want, you can use liquid chlorine instead. Use a gallon of liquid chlorine, okay? And you're going to let that disperse into your pool. At the same time, you're going to add, if it's the PR10,000 and you have a standard play pool, probably 8 ounces of the PR10,000 phosphate remover, okay? I would check the label of whatever product you're using and see what it tells you for the size pool that you have. Now, the two reasons really that you're going to add those two things, the trichlor granules and the phosphate remover, here's why. When you have the kind of windstorm and dust that gets blown into a pool and vegetation, you're going to get an abundance of two things. Algae spores, all right, because they're airborne and they're going to fall in abundance because of the wind and everything blowing in there, and the dust. And the second thing you're going to get an abundance of is phosphates. Now, if you didn't see my video on algae and algicides and why you don't need them, please watch it. I'll put a link to that below in the video, below this video. But you're going to want to watch that because phosphates, in the most simple terms, are the primary food source for algae. So if you remove the phosphates, the food source, then the algae doesn't get a chance to feed and grow. So those algae spores are not going to flourish. They're going to die, okay? The other thing is, when algae dies, it releases phosphates. So you got to deal with the phosphates. So that's the next step, okay? And again, you're running your filter and you're running your system. Now, while this is going on, you may have had to empty your skimmer basket again or pump basket, and that's totally fine. Or you may notice that maybe your sand filter, especially if you have a sand filter, may start blowing back some dirt through the returns. If that's the case, you're going to want to backwash that sand filter again because the sand gets saturated pretty quickly, more quickly than the other two types of filters, okay? So once that's going on and you've got that going on, okay, and all those steps have been taken, then you're just going to let your filter system run continuously for probably 24 hours. And if you do that, your pool should be fine, all right? Okay? So keep that in mind. So again, those steps are, number one, empty all pump, skimmer, and other types of baskets so that you get good water flow. Number two, net out using a good leaf rake like this, the vast majority of vegetation from the bottom and the surface of your pool, okay? Number three, turn your filter system on, and if you have a booster pump for a pop-up system, turn that on as well. And if you need to, backwash your sand or DE filter, okay? Then you can start dealing with your chemistry, right? Make sure your chlorine levels are up. Add a pound of trichlor granules or shock to your pool, and some phosphate remover to get rid of the phosphates so that the algae can't feed and grow. And then let your system run for 24 hours straight and you should be fine. Okay, that's pretty much it. Now, let's say you have a pool and you don't have a vacuum, or your vacuum didn't do good, or for some reason you got a lot of dust in the bottom of the pool, or you don't have a vacuum. You might have to vacuum your pool the old-fashioned way. I had a video on that. I'm not going to teach you how to do it here, but I'm going to put a link to that video on vacuuming your pool the old-fashioned way in the description below this video as well. A lot of links to look at, but these are things that will help you if you need those, okay? But I don't want to bore everybody else with all these specific things, okay? So if you have a sand filter and you are vacuuming up a large amount of dirt, right, for whatever reason, you might have to backwash that sand filter, because as I said before, that sand is going to saturate real fast and it can only hold so much. Same thing with the DE filter. Sometimes it can get overwhelmed. If you find that you're losing suction on those types of filters, that's probably an indicator that you're going to need to clean your filter medium. Same thing with a cartridge filter, okay? But for the most part, that's all you need to do, and if you do that, you should be good to go. So I don't think there's any more to add, except make sure you have those chemicals on hand regularly. Make sure you've got a good functioning cleaning system for your pool, and that your filter medium is kept clean, and you should be fine no matter what. All right, so that's my video on how to deal with the aftermath of a monsoon / dust storm / haboob. I hope it makes sense, and I hope it is helpful to those of you who live in those type of areas. If you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the comments section below, or you can email me directly. My email address will come across the bottom of the screen as always. It's kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Once again, kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Thank you again for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And until we meet again, remember, be safe, have fun, and always, always, always watch those children and elderly people and pets around water. And I'll see you next time.